If you're losing deals, even with the perfect script, it's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. And after taking over 7,000 sales calls and closing over $8 million in deals, I can tell you tonality makes a difference, and you can master it simply by understanding a few things. Using the right words, pacing, and voice inflections. So if you actually implement what we're about to go over, this can easily double and triple what you're currently making. So let's go ahead and dive in. All right, so first things first, we need to understand, why is tonality actually important? Because tonality is the key to getting below the surface. So tonality and body language goes hand in hand. Like really your voice inflections and your body language, what you're actually saying with your body, these things go hand in hand. And this is the language, this is the lens that the prospect views what we're saying. So it's not only the words, it's how they actually receive the words. To be able to connect, we need to be able to use our tonality not to trigger resistance, but actually get below the surface. This allows us to have reliable sales conversations, right? It's not good that we have unreliable sales conversations. We want something that is repeatable so we know the people who we're talking to, they're actually telling us the truth, right? In order for them to tell us the truth, we need them to actually trust us. So they're actually open. So understand there are different types of tonality. And then this is not all of them, but this is generally what we're going to be using in a sales conversation. We have confused, curious, concerned, challenging, skeptical, and playful. Okay. And I'll go through and I'll break down each one of them. But generally speaking, these are the types of different tones that you need to master in a sales conversation to make sure people are open and we're getting beneath the surface and really connecting with the prospects. And really, how you break down, how do you actually understand, and how do you actually master tonality? In order to be something, be confused, be skeptical, be concerned, be playful, you tend to have to do something. What do I mean by that? A lot of tonality comes down to is being able to master your state. So what your state is how you're feeling like internally, okay? Now, this is something I got from Tony Robbins in terms of like state management, but it also really easily tracks onto tonality. There are three things that make up our state, like how we're feeling internally and how we come across to the world. We have our physiology, which is our body. We have our focus. What are we actually paying attention to? And then number three, we have our language. So we're going to break down each three of these so we know how to actually master our tone so we can get beneath the surface and get people to actually open up. That's what's key. Because understand, managing your state equals mastering tonality. If your focus is a fear of you hopping on the call, or you're afraid that you're going to lose like the sale, or there's a bit of insecurity, anxiety, this will actually show up in your language and your physiology, okay? The prospect will feel what you feel. A lot of tonality, a lot of sales is transferring a feeling. So we need to get good at mastering our internal feeling on the call so we transfer that feeling to other people. So when we are transferring that feeling, we need to know what type of feeling we're actually transferring, okay? So what are you and why? So when you're going through your sales structure, understand what you need to be a part of the sales structure and why you're actually getting them to feel a certain way. So it's one thing to actually understand, like, okay, here's the different tones, but it's also another thing to understand, like, why am I trying to get somebody to feel a certain type of way? Why do I need to use this tonality? If we understand the why behind it, and we understand the emotion we're trying to convey to get beneath the surface, then the tonality that you need to be using in certain situations are going to become a lot more clear, okay? Let's break it down a little bit. So very first thing, confused tone. So why would we act confused? So when you are confused, people want to help you. So why would I be confused when there's certain points of the conversation? So I can pull the prospect into me. So, for example, a confused tone, and we'll get into a lot more examples later, but a real easy example of a confused tone is when you're probing into something. When somebody says something and you're not quite sure what they mean by that, if you use a confused tone, it gets them to expand on it, right? Like they'll come more into you and they'll expand. This is something really easy you can do. Like they'll say something like an emotional word, like, oh yeah, it's been tough. Tough? Right? You tilt your head. You put a little fro in your brow, right? And we'll get a little bit into physiology later, or we'll get a little bit into like the actual body language that helps with it later. But then you ask it in a confused tone, and what that's going to do, it's going to cause them to actually open up, right? Tough, okay? Simple. So why are we doing that? So the prospect opens up, they can pull into you. Okay. You're curious. Why would you be curious in a sales conversation? They need to understand that I'm here to actually understand them and help, not here to push something on them. Okay. So when you're curious, a lot of times this is going to be very early on in the conversation. You're going to want to be more curious, get them to be more open, right? Like, well, what had you go ahead and book in the call today? Now, again, I'm not confused. I'm curious, like, hey, what's going on? Right? Concerned. Why would I be concerned in the sales conversation? Because if the prospect stays in their current situation, they'll be in a bad spot. So if a prospect tells you something that is very concerning and you're probing into it, if you just sound like really curious and there's no emotion to it, what it won't do, it won't amplify the actual pain that they're feeling. So this concern actually helps amplify the pain, right? Because it's like, again, if this continues, they're going to be in a bad spot. Like, well, what happens if nothing changes though? Right? Again, I'm concerned for them, and we'll get a little bit later of how you actually get that across. Okay, next, I'm challenging. Why? I don't want them to buy into their limitations because I know they can do more. Again, this is going to happen in sales conversation, objection handling, whatever it is. But it's like, well, dude, do you want to stay where you're at right now? Right? I'm challenging. Okay. And then I'm playful. Why? Helping people is fun and it's not a stressful process. Again, I'm going to use this a lot very early on in the sales conversation of, well, hey man, if you're happily married, you tend not to go out on dates. So what even had you book in a call in the first place, right? Being playful allows people to open up to you. So generally speaking, these are the types of tone that we need to be able to master. But in order to master it, we need to know the why behind it. Once we know the why, right, we know where to put our focus, why we need to get them to feel this way, then we can talk about our body language. Okay. And then our actual language too. So ask yourself any question that you're asking in a sales conversation. What do I want the prospect to feel? If you understand what you want the prospect to feel, this will illuminate what type of tone you need to actually use to get the prospect to open up. Because understand something. There is a difference between perception, intent, and value. If your perception in the prospect eyes is somebody who just wants to sell, your intent is you're saying things to get them to buy, and the value you bring is you're pressuring them to do something. If your perception, on the other hand, okay, is somebody who actually cares, your intent is to help, and the value you bring is to see if there is even a sale to be made in the first place and getting them what they want. So a lot of what tone comes down to, it's not the perfect words, okay? It's getting them to receive the words that you're actually saying. Because I could say the wrong words with better intent. They view me as being there to actually help. And I will get a much better result than the perfect words with the wrong tone because the intent is not there. So they just think that I'm doing something to them. So being able to master tone is really being able to master people's perception of you. And if you master people's perception of you, they'll be much more open, right? Which means they're more open to the value you actually bring, the value of helping them, not the value of selling them. Two wildly different things. Okay. So let's dive into different sections of the call and how you should be coming across. Okay. So at the start of the call and really understanding people's situation, what you need at the very start of any call is you need zero sales resistance. If somebody hops on the call and they are very guarded, you're going to have a hard time really connecting with that person. So what you really need to do is make sure their guard is as low as possible. And in order to do that, just like we talked about before, right? A curious tone lets somebody know that I'm there to actually understand what's going on. Like curiosity pulls them in because they see you that you're not just like another salesperson trying to push a product. You're actually curious on why they are there. We cannot assume we know why they're there, okay, or what the situation is. So when we're talking about like a curious tone, there's different ways that we can go ahead and address and come up with the curious tone, but we're talking about our actual focus. Do we actually want to know that they're there? That's check one. Do I actually want to know why they're there? Like that should be a really easy check. Focus, check. Okay. Then we could talk about language. Now, you could have the perfect tone, or if you're working on your tone, you're working on the body language, you're working on all this stuff, you can say, well, hey, I'm curious. What made you go ahead and book the call? Even though my tone might not be perfect, I'm still conveying the same thing. Hey, I'm curious. Right now, don't overuse it. Or, hey, I was just wondering, like you want to switch it up, but your language can give insight to what you're trying to get at with your body language and tone as well. And then when you're actually talking about the body language and physiognomy, okay, there's different things we can do to convey a curious tone, right? One is tilting your head to the right? You're inquisitive. Okay. Another one is just like kind of raising your eyebrows a little bit, right? Or furrowing your brow. Like this is just like, hey, like what's going on? Right? Like you are trying to invite them in. You're actually interested in what they have to say. And I would say you want to practice this. Practice being curious. So like, hey, like what made you want to go ahead and book in the call today? Be more inquisitive, be a little bit lighter in your voice. And I would say something like tilting your head will help you convey this. Okay. Now, again, it's not going to be perfect the first time you try it. Again, if you're practicing these tones for the first time, but it'll give you something to go off of. And if you need to practice this in the mirror or film yourself and actually look at how you're conveying these emotions, go ahead and do that to make sure you can go ahead and dial it in. So next, when we're actually diving into people's problems, what it needs to be is a mixture of curiosity and concern. So when a prospect tells us their problems, we are concerned for them. State can be transferred to a prospect through the conversation. If we are concerned, it makes a prospect concerned or amplifies their concern about the problem, which creates more urgency to solve their problems. On the other hand, if we break the tension, right, like we laugh, we break the tension, we're not actually concerned, we don't treat it like it's a big deal, it can cause a prospect to take their problems less seriously and have less urgency. So, if we don't help them amplify their pain, people tend not to change. So again, where's our focus? If I'm not actually helping them amplify their pain, the likelihood that they're going to stay where they have been is much higher. And ultimately, if I'm here to help, I need to get them to see how bad the pain is. And human beings, we're social creatures. So half of why we know like things are bad is because like when we compare it to other things, right? Like people are really good at adapting to certain situations. But if everyone around you is like, dude, that's really fucked up, right? Like it really hits you like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be in this situation. And also understand people think by talking. So when you're diving into somebody's problems, this is probably like one of the first times that they've really fully actualized and talked about and actually considered deeply these problems. So if you just don't actually get them to amplify it, then they're not going to amplify it in their mind. They're not going to think about it the way that they should think about it. That's what's going to create the urgency. So when you're talking about like, you need to be curious to understand what's going on. But once you actually start to understand like what's going on, then there does need to be a creep of concern. And the way you got to think about this is somebody like, if your friend's like, dude, I have stage 4 cancer. And you'd be like, well, tell me more about that. Like in just like a very nonchalant tone, you're like, dude, like what's going on? Right? Like you'd probably scrunch down a little bit. You'd have a concerned look on your face and you would ask like, dude, what? Like that's the emotion you need to convey across. And that concern helps amplify the emotion. If you are not concerned when somebody's telling you concerning things, one to two things can happen. Number one, they minimize their pain. Or number two, they don't even feel like you're listening. It comes across as disingenuous. And again, if it comes across as disingenuous, they view you as somebody who's just trying to sell them. So again, how do we go ahead and make sure we are sounding concerned? So number one is the focus. Are we actually taken aback a little bit about their situation? Again, and I understand if you're on sales calls every single day and people are telling your problems every single day, that it can become a bit numbing in a sense. Okay. I totally understand that, doing this for a long time, but you also have to understand that every single person you're talking to is an individual with their individual life, with these individual problems. So a lot of really making sure you can master your tone is being able to really quiet everything outside yourself and truly be able to focus on them. And if you're truly focusing on them and they're telling you concerning things, again, you should be concerned about these concerning things. So really, is your focus where it should be? Are you actually focusing on them? Do you actually genuinely care when people tell you problems? Okay, we can also talk about in our language. It's like, hey man, that's a bit concerning. Can you tell me more about that? Right? Again, we don't want to overuse it, but we can use our language as a shortcut to really make sure when we're working on our tone to come across the way that we need to come across. And then also with the concerning tone, more of like the fro the brow, okay, and kind of like lean down, like slouch down, like even a bit more of a hush tone, like, hey, like what's going on there, man? Right? Like this will come across as like more concerned. Like the way you got to think about it is you're kind of scared to ask the question, right? It's a little bit more in a hushed tone, and you're a bit more like you're scared to actually ask the question. That's how you can come across a little bit more concerned. So again, if you're thinking about it, like your buddy's just like, you're at a bar with your buddy. He's like, dude, I got stage 4 cancer. You want to be like, you have stage 4 cancer? You'd be like, dude, like you'd be a little bit quiet. This is concerning. Like this can't get out. Like this is between me and you right now. Like we need to have a serious conversation. That's how it needs to come across. Like when you're concerned in these conversations. Now, again, you can overdo it, right? With any of this tone, you can definitely overdo it and come across less human. But I'm really trying to convey the points. So when somebody says like, "Oh, yeah, I mean, I've been struggling for the past 5 years." If I just go, "Oh, well, like, what's that actually doing to you?" Right? Just more nonchalant. Again, it doesn't really convey the emotion. I'm like, okay, 5 years, man. Like, what's that doing to you? Like, I'm concerned. I need to know what's going on. And again, with anything, you can overdo it, but some type of concern will get them to amplify their pain and get them to open up a lot more. Now, when we're talking about next, understanding buying decisions, this is when you can challenge people's preconceived notions about why they've done what they've done or why they haven't taken action. This is when, especially in discovery, this is when I will be pre-handling a lot of objections, or this is going to convey really easily to objection handling as well. So all of this is just going to go over how do you actually shift people's beliefs. So your tone needs to shift more towards concern, but also challenging and skeptical, especially when you're challenging beliefs, right? You're challenging their beliefs because if they hold on to these beliefs, again, what is your why? Where's your focus? If they hold on to these beliefs, they're going to be in a bad spot, right? You know they can do better. And the way I'm always thinking about this is like you're an older brother and you're talking to your younger brother. Like, dude, I care about you. I know you can do better, but I'm not accepting your bullshit. So you don't want to be a pushover. So when understanding like what they've done before, trying to solve the problems, or why they haven't been out there trying to solve the problem. So there's a bit of like pushing the prospect away. Okay. So when you're challenging a belief, you're pushing them away in a sense. So why I'm showing them that I'm here for them, but if they don't want me here, okay, to help them change, like I'm not here. So when I'm challenging, it's like, hey man, do you want things to stay that way? Hey man, do you want things to just stay the same? Like I'm a little bit pushing away. It's like, hey dude, do you want things to stay the same? Or it's like, hey man, can you see how like that way of thinking has like led you to being where you're at right now? Are you okay with me saying that? Right? I'm a bit challenging, right? And what I'm saying is like, hey dude, like this is serious, but like, are you okay with this? Are you willing to change this? And if you're not willing to change this, dude, like I don't need to be here. Okay. There's no need on my side to get the sale. There's a need for the prospect to solve the problem. And this is the big key, especially when you're talking about challenging, okay, and being skeptical of people's perceptions, skeptical of their worldview, skeptical of beliefs, is there needs to be a disconnect. If you're very attached to the sale, if you're very scared that this person isn't or isn't going to buy, you're going to have a hard time challenging with the conviction that you're going to need to challenge with in order to actually get them to, rethink some of these things. Because you'd be surprised. Most people do things and believe things and have no good reason why they do or believe certain things, right? This is just everyone in life. I'm sure I have certain beliefs, and if I was challenged on and I was actually honest with myself, I'd be like, yeah, there's probably no good reason I believe that, right? Everyone has these things, but most people you talk to on sales calls who haven't taken action, who's like had this problem for 5 years or whatever it is, and they just haven't done anything. There's no good reason behind it. And if I just allow them to accept that, hey, I just haven't taken action for these past 5 years, and there's no good reason, and I don't actually challenge them on that, the likelihood that we're going to get to the end of the conversation and it's going to be hunky dory and they're just going to be like, all right, let me go ahead and move forward, is going to be lower. So I need to be able to challenge in a way that gets people to actually question their beliefs that they have about whatever it is they're doing. Okay. I'm trying to keep it as general as possible to, make sure like any type of sales conversation could fit into these. So when we're talking about like being challenging and skeptical, I know I'm saying like on some level you push back. You can also push back in your body language. Like, hey, are you okay with me saying that? So it's really when you're talking about like the actual like body language, something that you can do is, again, you can actually physically put out your hand and move back when you say something. This will help you come across with the right tone. And again, what is your focus at? So it's like, hey, I'm here for you if you need to change, but if you don't need to change, like, I'm fine. I don't need the sale. So again, like, that's where your focus is at. Now, when you're talking about actual language, I probably wouldn't use the language of, I'm challenging you right now, right? Or I'm a bit skeptical. You can ask, like, hey, can I challenge you on that a little bit? Right? Like, that's a real easy way that you can use it in your language. But again, I want to overuse it. You can overuse a lot of this stuff. But when we're talking about like a challenging tone, it's going to be a bit more authoritative. You need to have more conviction. And there is a little bit of like, well, hey, man, are you okay allowing this to happen? Right? Like, there's a little bit of you actually pushing back. And if you're able to do that, this will cause people to either rethink their beliefs, come back into you, and you actually have a more productive conversation around their beliefs and help them shift it. Next, we have future pace. What is future pace? The future pace is you need to understand why they want their goals and what that goal actually does for them. Okay. So when you're understanding like what their actual idealized goal is, our tone needs to be more light and curious and interested. They're telling you their dreams and their aspirations. Like, we need to reward this behavior by being interested in what they have to say. Also, by being light and curious, it allows them to open up more. So their dreams and goals don't just stay surface level. They tell themselves exactly what they want and emotional outcomes that it brings. So understand, most people in their day-to-day life are not able to dream. Most people, if they talked about their dreams around them, either people wouldn't take them seriously or they feel some type of shame about them. So when you're really asking somebody about their dreams, you need to create like, quote unquote, like a safe space for them to open up. And the reason why you need to get them to open up is it needs to become more than something surface level. So if you really think about this, if you think about this for yourself, and I, like anybody I work with, I walk them through this same process that, you take prospects through, is if your goal is very specific and there are specific tangible things you need and specific emotional outcomes that they'll get, you're going to be much more actually willing to chase after it. Okay. For example, if you talk to somebody and they're like, oh yeah, I just want to go ahead and like buy a house, right? And we leave it at that. Like, yeah, buy a house, that is something tangible, but on some level, it's surface level. Okay. So if you're able to get beneath that, like, okay, I want to buy a house. Okay. Why buy a house? And again, it's very curious. It's very light. And it's like, oh, why buy a house? It's like, oh, well, the house I'm at is like pretty small. Pretty small? Like, what's going on? Right? And then again, I'm going to get more. So if I get out of them, I go from, hey, I just want to buy a house. They'll run towards that a little bit versus, yeah, I want to buy a house because I just had a baby and the house we're in is way too cramped. And the house I want to buy is in this neighborhood. It's going to be this many bedrooms and it's this color, right? Which one do you feel like they're going to run towards better? Like the one they can actually visualize, right? If you can visualize something, you're much more likely to try to actually chase it, okay? So that's the main difference. And why you want to be light and curious, again, you want to invite them to actually open up, because a lot of what you'll be doing when you are future pacing or getting somebody to open up about their dreams is just getting them to be specific. And for a lot of people, that can be probably the first time they've done it. So it can be a bit uncomfortable if you don't have the correct tone. So if you actually watch any of my calls, something I do anytime I'm future pacing somebody is I push my mic back, I lean forward, and this is the only time I do it the entire call, okay? And I'm much more light in my voice. Like, oh, why is that? Like, oh, well, what would that do for you? Okay, any reason why? And again, I tilt my head, okay? And I'm just very curious. I'm talking like in the back of my throat. I'm very light. And what this does is it just causes people to actually open up. I sound more interested. I sound more engaged. Now, the difference is I can't be like that during the entire call because then that's just how I am. But if I make that shift in my body language and in my tone at the future pace, they'll be a lot more open to those specific things. Okay. So again, what is your focus? Where's your focus? Very light and curious. Why? I actually want to know what's going on. Right? If you actually sit and you have conversations with people and you really understand their dreams, their aspirations, their goals, you'll start to understand people are a lot more interesting than what you think. And I've taught this to so many people, and that's always the biggest feedback I get is like, dude, I can't believe what people tell me now. It's like, yeah, like people are inherently interesting. So if you have the focus of like you actually want to know, you actually want to get to the interesting nitty gritty, not that, oh, I just want to make more money. Yeah, fucking no shit. Everyone wants to make more money. Well, that's actually not true, right? You don't want to fall into an obvious conversation, but it's like, it's the why behind you want to make more money. If you would ask me, like, what, 5 years ago, why I want to make more money, right? Like, again, it's a very different answer than the why I want to make more money now, right? And it's like, this is always a changing thing for the people that you're talking to, and everyone has different interests, but it doesn't matter that it's important to you as a salesperson. It just needs to matter to them as the actual prospect. And the only way you're going to get it to matter to them is understanding the why behind it, which means we got to sound fucking interested. And again, coming down to our body language, move forward, lighter in the back of the throat. When we're talking about the actual language, you can say things like, hey, I'm curious, or, really just want to know. It's like, hey, man, that's interesting. Saying these things like gets people to understand like you're actually interested in what they say. Again, don't overuse it, but it definitely does help. And then consequence. When you ask consequence questions, this is concerned. Sometimes it can be challenging. It depends, right, on what you need, but why. In consequence, we need to amplify pain to create more internal tension that creates urgency. Your job as a salesperson, get somebody to take action on that is in the best interest of them. Oftentimes, it's going to be invest in whatever it is that you're selling, right? If they have the problems, you solve the problems. It's in their best interest to actually solve their own problems. Believe it or not, that's why we're here. So, again, a bit of concerned, like we were talking about before, and a bit of challenge. Like, well, hey, man, like what happens if nothing changes, right? Like that's a little bit more challenging. If you notice, it's a bit more forward, right? Or it's like, hey, like what happens if nothing changes? Like I'm a little bit more like pulled back. I'm a little bit more scared of like actually asking the question. And maybe scared is not like the correct thing, but it's like you're kind of pulling your punches a little bit. Like you're kind of like pulling them aside and you're just like, dude, like it's a little secret between you, but it's like you're really concerned. It's like, dude, how long have you had this cancer, man? Why didn't you tell me? Right? Like I'm concerned. I actually care about this person. And if they feel like you actually care, again, they're going to be much more open to what you have to say. That's the real key thing. So again, we can use our language like, hey man, I'm concerned, right? Don't overuse it. But again, make sure our focus is in the right spot. We actually care what they have to say, and we actually care that they feel the internal tension so they move forward. So you got to understand the gap. Okay, so there's two main gaps in the conversation: what people run away from and what people run towards. So what do people run away from? They run away from their current situation. They run from their current what, right? Their current situation, and what if that current situation stays where it is right now? Okay, so people run away from their what, right? Like what it is or what it could be in the future, right? It's their current state. People run towards their why. They run towards like the ability of something to be something. Ideally, you have both. If you have both, you have a really good conversation, but it's our tone that makes sure the answers we get for both of these are reliable. People open up, people actually trust us. And the last few things that we want to talk about is going to be commitment to change. Your tone needs to be challenging. Why? We want them to defend and dig their heels in on why they need to change. Now, this is something that you can do quite a bit during the sales conversation. When you ask somebody, when somebody takes a step in your direction, you want to ask them why. You want to ask like, well, why now, man? Right? You want to be a bit challenging because anytime somebody takes a step in your direction, you want to get them to defend that step. Everything you say as a salesperson is absolute garbage. Everything they say is gospel. So I need them to actually defend them taking a step in my direction. If I get them to defend that, they're much more likely to come in my direction. Now, again, when we're talking about a challenging tone, it's a bit more forward. Okay. You don't want to say, hey, I'm challenging you right now every single time. But again, the main focus is we need to get them to defend that way of thinking. Like you're challenging that way of thinking. Like, well, why actually do this, man? Why do this now? Why not push this off until later? Right. So we're getting somebody to actually commit to change. And then when you're going through, and this is through the entire sales conversation, when you're probing and clarifying, you need to be confused or curious. Why? If you're confused, someone thinks, oh, they don't know what I'm saying. Let me explain more. We need them to open up. So this is something that you really want to be doing throughout the entire conversation when people use loaded words. And people use loaded words all the time. And just because we kind of all know what that word means, people use it in different contexts, and people use it in different actual definitions all the time. So if I'm talking to 100 different people and they tell me they're stressed, I'm going to get 100 different definitions of what do they mean by stress. Like, oh, like, what do you mean by stress though? Or stress? Again, I'm confused. I'm curious. Like, what do you mean by that? Like, that's really what you're trying to get across. So you can even say, again, where's your focus? You need to get them to open up. What is your language? It's like, hey, man, I'm curious. What do you mean by stressed? Right? Or we can use our body language. Again, we tilt our head, we furrow our brow. Okay. It's like, stressed? Like, what's going on? Okay. Different things we could do to convey the right tone. Okay, so one of the other things we really need to dial in is understanding verbal pacing. So understand how quickly or how slowly you say things add up to what we say as well. It adds up to the information that we're giving. When you want to draw more attention or you want a deeper answer, you slow down or you add a verbal pause. It comes across when you are slower or add a verbal pause, it causes people to think more about the question or statement you're making, right? So if you think more about it, they need to stop and think more about the answer that they're giving. So if you add verbal pause or you come across like you're actually thinking, it comes across as it's a more thoughtful question, which they need a more thoughtful answer to your thoughtful question. Why? We want someone to think more deeply on a topic or we want to go beneath the surface. This is when we'll slow down, we'll add verbal pauses, or we'll add different emphasis to different parts of the words. Okay. For example, if I'm diving into somebody's pain, I'll probably say something like this. It's like, okay, but why is it actually important for you to get better and improve your sales skills like now though? Right. Again, a couple things I did there. First and foremost, I asked, why is it important? Okay. I thought a little bit, right? I'm thinking about what I'm about to say, even though I know exactly what I'm going to say. I'm adding in a little bit of a verbal pause in there, and I'm giving the understanding that I'm thinking, and then I'm putting the emphasis on the now, though. Okay. So what it does is a few things. Number one, it comes across as it's a more thoughtful question. If it's more thoughtful, they'll put more thought into it. Number two, you are putting an emphasis on the word now. So they're going to more answer the now, like why they want to do it now, rather than why it's important, right? So just depending on what you're actually asking and what you need to know, you'll emphasize different words, right? Just in the sentence, like I just said, you're going to emphasize different words. I'm putting an emphasis on emphasis because that's the emphasis I want you to feel in that sentence that I'm talking about. So through your tone, through your pacing, right? Just like what I did there, you tell people what's actually important to pay attention to. Okay. If you want a more knee jerk reaction answer out of someone, you speed up your cadence. It comes across like a throwaway question. Why would you want to do that? You want to eliminate possibilities as though it was a bit ridiculous, or you want to have less attention on a topic. For example, if you're asking somebody, hey, why don't you just do like that? Right? You don't want to ask it like super, super thought out and super verbal pacing. You want a kind of knee jerk reaction answer to get you to tell you that's ridiculous. Hey, like what's the main reason you'd be looking for like outside help to go ahead and actually get to like 10,000 per month? I don't know, rather than just hope and pray you can figure it out on your own. Like the last part is very quick on purpose, right? Rather than it's like, well, why don't you just go out, like try all this stuff on your own and just hope it works? I don't want them to think about it a lot. I wanted the last part to be a little bit of a throwaway so I get a bit more of a knee-jerk reaction answer, okay? And the last thing that we're going to touch on when it comes to tone is you can only feel the acceleration. Okay. It's a change in tone and body language that draws attention to it. If you're concerned the entire time, okay, with every question you ask, it means absolutely fucking nothing. But if you're concerned when you're talking about problems, it draws more out of it because there's a shift. Just like when you're in a car, right? You don't really feel like if you're at 100 miles per hour, right? Like I'm driving in my Porsche, I'm 100 miles per hour. Like being 100 miles per hour doesn't really feel any different than like 60 miles per hour, okay? Unless you have a shittier car and it's really fucking, it's hurting to get that high, right? But getting up to it, right? The acceleration, you feel that. You're like, oh shit, right? So it's the same thing when it comes to tone. It's the shift in tone that makes it important. This is also when it comes down to verbal pacing. If you're fast the entire sales call, it's hard to speed up. So if you want to, again, you want a knee-jerk reaction answer out of them, but you're like talking quick the entire time, right? You're talking like Ben Shapiro. You're going to have a hard time speeding up your cadence and having people understand you. Also, on the other end, okay, if slow, it's hard to slow down. So if you're talking very methodically and you talk like this, and there's no actual reason why you're talking like this, when you need to emphasize, right? Like it's going to be a lot harder to slow down to convey what you need to convey. Okay. So you want to keep a medium pace so you can speed up or slow down when it's ever needed. Okay. Pauses should only be used when you need to draw attention to something or you want them to think deeper. If you pause all the time, it means nothing. This also comes down to emphasizing words. If I emphasize 3 to 4 different words in a sentence, right? Like just like where like if I go, well, why is it important for you to do something now though, right? Like that's kind of a confusing way to ask a question. So you also got to be scarce with your emphasis as well, right? So I would say only really emphasize one word in a sentence. If you're emphasizing multiple words, it makes no sense. If you're pausing all the time, no matter what, again, it starts to make no sense. So you got to use these things when they're actually important. And how do we know when it's important, right? That's like what we talked about before. You have to understand really the why behind it, okay? And just understand, like, why are you asking these questions? Like, what do you want the prospect to feel? And when you understand what you want the prospect to feel, it'll become a lot more illuminated how you actually convey the right tone. And what you can do as well is now that you have this knowledge, right? Like, now we need to talk about implementing it. So, obviously, practicing it, role playing it, but go back and listen to your own calls and really understand, like, the questions that you ask, like, hey, what am I trying to get the prospect to feel? And am I conveying the tone in a way that would get the prospect to feel that way? If I'm not, what do I need to be doing differently? If you do this, again, you'll be able to dial in your tone pretty quick, right? And close some more deals. So hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions or anything like that, go ahead, drop a comment down below, leave your biggest takeaway, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Let's go.